Hello, everyone. Hope everybody's enjoying their Monday afternoon. It is beautiful out today. We are going to go ahead and do our Need to Know podcast today about our 2020 legislative session. Obviously, these are very different times that we're living in, but we have to power through. The legislative session ended about a little over 20 days early this year, which is unheard of. The last time they had shut down session was for the Civil War, so it's been quite some time. A lot of things happened in the last week of session. March 18th was the last day of session. For this year, 2,762 bills were introduced, and 681 passed. Just to give you a little bit of a picture of what the last couple of days of session looked like. Session ended on March 18th, which was a Wednesday. That Friday, prior to that, there had been one bill that passed. So that is just telling you how many bills were passed in the last 4 or 5 days of session and kind of the fury that went through. So 681 bills did pass. So there was a lot of activity, a lot of different things. Because they adjourned, all legislation died unless it was passed. Obviously, everybody's been very preoccupied since session, but a lot of things did happen. A lot of good things happened during session. A lot of things that, obviously dealing with the COVID-19 happened in the waning days of session as well. I'm going to kind of walk through some of our priority pieces of legislation. This is all online. You can go to marylandbuilders.org/2020-session-wrap-up. And if you need that information, I can get it to you. We'll also be going around to a lot of our different groups, our councils and chapters, and giving a session wrap-up as well. So we will keep you updated, and if you have any questions, as usual, please contact me, and I'm happy to kind of share with you some of the things that my perspective on the way session ended for us. So I'm just going to go through some of our priority bills. Again, if it did not pass, it is dead for this year. That doesn't mean that it won't come back next year. I will say that Kerwin, as you know, which is the big education bill, was the big priority this session, and something that took up a lot of the time, and how to fund that. Now, obviously, a lot of things changed from the day that session started to the end of session because of all of the COVID-19 stuff that went on. So that did change some of the legislation as it moved forward. I will say that Kerwin bill did pass in the last couple of days of session. It is a $4 billion bill per year, and it passed with basically no funding mechanism associated with it. There's a few things that did pass that could provide some funding, but come 2030, it will need much more funding. There was a piece of the bill that was put in, an amendment to the bill, that basically said if the state income goes down by 7% in any given year, some of the programming is suspended, and it'll only go up by inflation as opposed to the big increases that are expecting. So we'll see. I think they'll obviously be back for next session to try to find out some funding, but it was a challenge to come up with funding in the weaning days of session when the country was kind of going through a lot of turmoil. Okay, I'm going to walk through some of the bills. Please, again, reach out to me if you have any questions. Senate Bill 1 and House Bill 1, which is the Built to Learn Act of 2020. This was a school construction bill, which was we supported, a lot of people supported, governors supported, both parties supported. It's a $2.2 billion school construction bill. And it does gives each county and different municipalities some funding to do some school construction. It's for 5 years, and they're using money from gambling and some bonding to do that. So we supported that. We're happy that it passed. It's a good piece of legislation that will help us move forward. Senate Bill 75 was a bill that we defeated. This bill, it deals with performance bond requirements. This required a home builder to purchase a performance bond on all new construction. Obviously, this would have been extremely expensive. We had some estimates that it would increase the cost of a house by $25,000, something like that. Hugely problematic. We were able to kill that bill because of the cost associated with it. We also already have the Home Builders Guarantee Fund. It's another reason that we were able to defeat that bill. Moving down to Senate Bill 285, House Bill 194, amended and passed. This is our State Highway Administration Highway Work Permits Pedestrian Access Act of 2020. This was one of our high priority bills. Again, I'm just kind of covering the high priority bills. We will, I have it all online if you want to look at any of the other stuff. This bill, as it was introduced, required pedestrian access 2 miles around certain metro stations and that type of thing. We worked with the sponsor, got it amended, changed it to 1 mile, and had some more language put in, basically saying that it would be, it dealt with, when practical, that kind of thing. So, working on that, that bill did pass. I think it was a pretty good piece of legislation at the end of the day that we were able to contribute to. Moving down to Senate Bill 386, House Bill 580. This was also a bill that we were able to defeat. This is Cooperative Housing Corporations, Condominiums, and Homeowner Association Reserve Studies. This bill would have required a reserve study to be done every 5 years on condos and HOAs. It also required 80% to be funded of the reserve study, and that was the problem we had with it. We had suggested some amendments to take that out and to make it much more in line with what Virginia does, which is just requires reserve studies every 5 years. This bill did die. It did not get passed. It's one of those bills that may have passed if session went to the end, and I'm sure it'll be back next year. So we'll continue to work with the sponsor and make sure that it has the right language in it as we move forward. Senate Bill 434, House Bill 722. This was the Labor and Employment, Occupational Safety and Health Heat Stress Standards Bill. It was a very voluminous bill. It had, I think it was a 10-page bill, a whole bunch of requirements dealing with heat standards and things that employers had to do. And honestly, most of the stuff that was in the bill, we didn't have a huge problem with a lot of the standards to make sure that your employees are safe. Those weren't the issues we had. It was more the reporting, and there was some things if you have multiple sites, and some of the just office stuff would have been really problematic for some of our smaller builders and remodelers. So we worked with a sponsor as well. We had some other associations and some other groups that worked with us as well on this bill, and we're able to get the bill pretty much struck. And the end result is that the Maryland Occupational Safety and Health Board will need to put some standards together dealing with heat stress. So we'll be involved in that process as we move forward. Senate Bill 471, House Bill 30. This was disclosure of unit owners and prohibited provisions on instruments by developers. This bill was... we didn't have a huge problem with it. It's really about disclosure and making sure that the developer has to disclose to certain people within the condo association, and there's no disclosure acts and those types of things. We worked really hard with the sponsor on some amendments to this bill. Again, this is another bill that did not pass, but it was really more because of time. We had come to an agreement on it. So we'll keep an eye on this bill. We were able to get some clarifying language that really helped us as we move forward. So we'll continue to work on that for next session. Senate Bill 543. Senate Bill 543 alters, this is Homeowners Association number of declarant votes. This alters the method of determining the date on which the declarant has a certain number of votes. So this bill basically would have said that basically taken out weighted voting for condos and HOAs, which would have been problematic for us in the early stages of development. This bill also did not move forward. Moving forward with some of the other bills that were top priority. Let's see. There was a couple of bills on the Senate side that did pass that we were supportive of. One was the Apprenticeship Startup Act of 2020. This alters the definition of eligible apprentice. So again, we try to do anything that we can do to support the apprenticeship programs. Senate Bill 794, House Bill 603. This is the County Board of Education establishing Regional Career and Technical Education Schools Authority. This was something that was really important to our Eastern Shore members, to be able to establish a regional and technical school. So we were very happy about that. A couple other bills, Senate Bill 905, House Bill 840. This bill was State Highway Administration Construction and Maintenance Permit Requirements, Nighttime Construction Noise Reduction Act. This bill basically would have eliminated being able to do nighttime construction on state highway projects. Obviously hugely problematic. It would slow things down, make things more expensive, that type of thing. So we worked with some of our other groups that in Annapolis to try to kill this bill, and we were able to do that. So that bill did not pass either. Senate Bill 926, House Bill 1425. This is the Climate Solutions Act of 2020, Greenhouse Gas Emissions Reduction Act. This bill deals with greenhouse gas emissions, something that we've been working on and obviously will continue to be working on. This bill had a lot of problems, that there was a lot in it. There was some solar mandates, especially on larger construction projects over 20,000 feet. There were some just logistical issues with that, and some other things. So we, again, tried to work with a sponsor. The bill did not advance this year, so we will keep an eye on that as well. Senate Bill 994, House Bill 1127. This is the Maryland Electricians Act of 2020. It's had a lot of things dealing with low voltage licensing and some other things. It was, again, a kind of a thick bill that dealt with electricians and trying to really do a lot of reform on that. We didn't have a huge problem with that. The bigger issue was affordability. And we were concerned what it would do to affordability. So we were able to get the bill amended to just create a work group so we can look at this. This is a bill we've seen, probably 10 years in a row. So it's come in every year. We've always had some concerns about what the just implications are, the real world implications would be. So we'll keep an eye on that as we move forward with that. Senate Bill 1013, House Bill 1149. This was the Social Housing Act, and it was going to establish social housing subprogram within the Partnership Rental Housing Program. Again, this would be a program to buy affordable housing basically for the government. Our biggest issue with it was the funding mechanism. It would have increased the transfer tax for any property over $1 million. It also would have decreased the first-time home buyer, what they have to pay for houses under $250,000, which was good, but it got rid of the first-time home buyer tax credit for anything above $250,000. So we had a lot of concerns with the funding mechanism on the bill. We worked with a sponsor on it. We tried to come up with some amendments, but nothing quite worked. It also had a $75 surcharge on all transactions to fund it. So again, concerned about affordability. But we will, again, probably be working on that bill as we move forward. There were several tax bills this year that dealt with a lot of different things to try to get funding mechanisms for Kerwin. One would be House Bill 222, which was capital gains income. This increased the tax rate for 1% on the capital gains. Obviously a concern for some of our members. We were able to defeat that one as well. House Bill 295. This was also a corporate income tax bill dealing with combined reporting. We see this bill every year. Usually it doesn't have a lot of momentum. However, this year it did because of Kerwin. But we still feel we were able to defeat the bill mostly because it was a corporate tax increase, and there's just a lot of appetite for that at this point. House Bill 481, transportation commercial signs penalty. This was going to increase the penalty for putting out signs on right-of-ways, which we're not really supposed to be doing, but I know that a lot of people do them, from $25 to $1,000 per sign. Obviously, we just felt like that was a little extravagant, so we were able to kill that bill as well. House Bill 517, this was a constitutional amendment dealing with environmental rights. This basically would have put on the ballot an amendment to the Constitution that would establish that every person has the right to clean and healthy environment. Sounds like a great concept, and I think we all agree that it is a good concept, but this bill would have expanded standing to basically anybody in the state for every single project. So we had a lot of concerns about that bill. Again, we worked pretty closely with some of the other groups, the commercial realtors as well as the counties, to defeat that bill. And that's a bill that we've seen a couple times as well. Moving forward, a couple other of our top priority bills. Let's see. House Bill, 1080, which was the CoSmart siting and design criteria. So this basically was going to apply CoSmart siting and design criteria, which is currently used for private or public projects, to private construction. We had a lot of concerns about that because this was a program that was really designed for public construction, not for private. So we again talked to the sponsor and were able to kill that bill as we move forward. House Bill 1128, Water Quality Certification Improvement Act. This would have required a person applying for water quality certification to submit a request to the Department of Environment. This bill was really geared towards Conowingo Dam and pipelines, but it would have gotten anybody under the general permit that is applying for a permit under the general permit. So we had a lot of concerns about what the implication would be. Again, we talked to the sponsor and was able to get that bill withdrawn, actually. Moving on, House Bill 1316. This was residential construction, electric vehicle charging. This bill would have required for single family and towns, if they had a garage or a carport, the infrastructure to be put in, so the plug to be put in for electric vehicles in the garages. And then for multifamily, it would have required a charging station for every 25 spots. Again, this was a bill that we worked quite a bit with the sponsors on. We were able to get it amended to make it a mandatory option. However, the bill did not pass. Quite honestly, this is another bill that ran out of time because of the shortened session. But we were able to get it amended so that it was really just more of an option on single family and towns. A couple other bills that we worked hard on. House Bill 1490, this is environment, building energy performance standards and greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. Again, this was another bill that deals with greenhouse gas emissions. Don't have a real problem with the concept. We've just seen in DC's implemented something like this, as is New York. So we've been following that, and we've seen that there's a lot of problems with implementation on this. So we had suggested a work group on it. Again, the bill didn't really advance this year, but we will work over the interim with a sponsor and some other groups to get that taken care of. House Bill 1561, discriminatory housing practices intent. This bill is another bill that we see pretty much every year, and basically, regardless of your intent, you could be found to be in violation of discrimination. So obviously problematic bill as we move forward. House Bill 1628, sales and use tax rate reduction in services. This was our big bill that came up in the middle of session to help pay for the Kerwin Commission. It basically would have decreased the sales tax from 6% to 5%. But it would have increased what you pay tax on. So right now you don't pay for most services. This would have put basically every service under the umbrella with a few exceptions. Obviously, top priority of our industry as well as a lot of other industries, and we were able to defeat that bill. We estimated that on a house that's $400,000, it would have added an additional $10,000 to the price of the house because of all the services that go into housing. So that really covers the big priority bills that we did on the state level. There's a couple other bills that we worked on that didn't pass that we would have liked to see pass, and we'll continue to work on those next year. One was House Bill 1207, electric companies conduit installation. This was based off of some issues we've had in Southern Maryland, and trying to make sure that our developers are protected for some grandfathering. So we'll continue to work on that issue in the interim. House Bill 1406, Modest Home Choices Act of 2020, requires local governments to allow the development of certain types of housing. This is really the missing middle bill that we've been working on. We really would like to have all the jurisdictions really have to look at how they're going to deal with housing affordability and that type of thing. So that bill basically would have required the counties to look at different ways to help the missing middle and make housing more affordable, whether it's through duplexes or garden apartments or that type of thing. So we'll continue to work on that bill as well. We were able to also defeat a few local bills. One was in Montgomery County dealing with land use certifications. That bill would have required the engineer, whoever's signing forest conservation bills, to sign under the penalty of perjury. We've been dealing with that bill for the last couple of years. We believe that that's too stringent of a requirement. So we have a lot of concerns about that, and we were able to kill that bill in subcommittee. There's also been a couple of Howard County bills that we have been had to prioritize that did not move past the subcommittee or the committee, the delegation. One dealt with moderate income housing units. Basically, it would have prohibited any fee in lieu for MAHUs, which has been a huge problem in single family housing. It would not have worked the way that it works currently. There was also a bill dealing with deferred maintenance that would have created an excise tax for commercial real estate. We had some issues with that as well. So we'll continue to move forward as we always do with all of these bills. We'll be working over the interim once the COVID crisis passes to try to prepare ourselves for next session, work with the legislators on the bills that did not pass, that I'm sure will be back next year, and put ourselves in the best foot possible. I'm having a couple of questions about the new executive order from the governor. Our interpretation is that it did not change what is considered an essential service. However, we encourage all of our members to follow all of the federal guidelines and that type of thing about essential services. The federal government also came out with some guidelines over the weekend, which is all on our website, that talk about residential construction being an essential service. So that's our interpretation, but we'll continue to monitor that situation as we move forward, and it's ever changing. So that kind of wraps up our session. It was definitely a different session. It started off as one of our busier sessions and then ended quite abruptly as we moved forward. So if anyone has any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is lgraf@marylandbuilders.org. Thank you.